Hey everyone, welcome to this brand new episode of Fenoms. In today's episode, we're very lucky to have Chris and Yancey. They're from MSTRO and they recently raised a $1.5 million seed round. So we're going to go behind their amazing journeys today. Do you mind starting off, Chris? How did you even get into the world of startups before running this startup?
Well, first, Margaret, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you for inviting us and give us a
My
chance
pleasure.
to talk to you. And I think it's like how any founder goes, right? Like it starts off with that passion and that obsession, and then you're kind of blind to what it takes to actually bring that to life. And I think that's the power of what gives an entrepreneur the ability to truly bring a dream to reality, right? Because if we knew exactly what it would have taken, I don't think Yancey and I would have gone through the pain and suffering and the humbling that we've gone through to get to where we are today.
Oh, I love that. And how did you guys meet? Before the startup or during the build out?
Yancey, I'll let you cover that, man.
Well, so yeah, I mean, our initial meeting was through a mutual friend. I was starting up like an MSP, like tech solution company, and a buddy of mine, which is one of the board guys, he brought Chris in and said, "Hey, Chris is works with these large integrators. Thinks he could be a good like bang wheel guidance or someone to bring on to help, bring the MSP idea to fruition." So from that, we kind of stemmed and started venturing into like one of the federal government contracts and how we were going to provide service, right? And during one of the bids we were doing, um, I had this concept, and it was kind of brought up from previous about how having a universalized data set and being able to connect to it and be able to talk to it and be more fluid, like kind of a language translator for data, since there's so many different data formats. And as me and Chris kind of did a sidebar from the rest of the group and decided to kind of go down this alley of how we were going to provide this for as a service contract to one of the bids we were doing. Uh, that sidebar, we're still on it. It's been what,
It's 5
4 or
years
5
later.
years now.
We never got back to him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of how that evolved and how I met Chris and things kind of kicked off.
No, that's really interesting. A lot of founders actually build their startups alone. What made you guys decide that you guys were a great fit to go ahead and build this mission that you're on?
I think it's kind of interesting that like that kind of that topic around like the solo entrepreneur, the solo like founder and so forth, because at the end of the day, like the technology today enables you to do that in some ways, but the complexity of bringing a product to market to monetize it and wrap it is a whole different ball game. It's almost like what you have to do is you have to build a product, which is usually what your passion's about or what you want to do, but then you have to figure out how to scale it and everything it's taught to you from an MBA standpoint or any of like the things that are out there. They immediately say, well, find a focus, do that vertical, get in there and get some traction. But the problem with that is when you do that, what you're really building is you're building the reason for the business model of what VCs like, which is raise more money, do more of this, because basically each of those rounds, what they become is they become your tech debt to rebuild it to now monetize for the next phase, right? But if you build a product to monetize day one, um, which is painful to do because what you're really talking about is a long roadmap until you actually will make money sometimes. Or you sacrifice making money to actually ensure that you can scale it and wrap it correctly from that standpoint and and have to make hard choices, right? Now, our journey and the reason that Yancey and I think make a perfect pair for this and the other two partners we brought in who's really helped us is Yancey's one of the best solution architects or best technical individuals I've ever worked with. And I come from the large integrator background, worked for CDIT, Unisys, NCT Data, running their $100 million captures
Wow,
across all the market segments in the federal government. And so I've worked with the best of the best.
that's
And I'll
huge.
tell
Yeah.
you this, it, it dawned on me very fast that every problem I brought Yancey, he solved. He found a way to do it technically. I've never seen that before. And so that relationship that we fostered and I guess the understanding I had around how to monetize and bring to market and truly capture clients, I think made the perfect pairing to where our obsession and the vision that Nancy was talking about before around what the product is, um, just took over. And that's what really made our partnership work. And go ahead, Yancey, I'll let you add to that.
To say that you're not a wizard is a lie. Chris is his ability like to connect to individuals and like coming from an engineer standpoint, like I tend to overthink everything and like, it's like, oh, how am I gonna go about cooking breakfast? Well, somebody just goes down and cooks. I'll probably think through like every ingredient, is the atmospheric pressure right to bake a cake, like kind of like just that in-depth like thought process that comes with like the engineering mind. And I recognize it and I try to deviate from it and not kind of expand from that. Chris's ability to view how what like we create and how it plugged into the market, where the market is and where it's going, and kind of like shifting and shaping, and like his ability to like vision that is something I've never seen before. And both of us, our drive is like freakishly insane. Like, people talk about, oh, 9 to 5. Well,
Is there stubbornness or drive?
I don't know, man. I don't know if it's stubbornness, being dumb, or like just naive or whatever it is, but like I say like passion towards like what we saw this at day one 5 years ago to now, it's been every day from 4 a.m. to midnight, like just constant. And it's never gotten old. And of course, we've had like our I wouldn't say bumps, but like challenges as far as solutioning and like figuring out like what's next and how do we maneuver things. It's just we tend to come up with a solution in a way to, here's a problem, let's solve it.
No, for sure. And I'm curious, both of you are talking about passion. What's the origin behind solving the issue that you're currently solving? Like, where did it come from? At some point in your lives, something happened where you decided to absolutely invest everything and sacrifice everything. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I'll throw something out there and then yes, you can tag on to this. But I think the aha moment was the exact time that I had to, maybe for you, but what it came down to is everyone was chasing like the AI driven, right? Build a product, let's do this. And Yancey and I immediately in the beginning, once we understood that unifying data and making it all on a universal platform, so it's one language, is awesome. But then what do you do with it next? And then when we started exploring what you do with it next, where everyone else was doing it in a way of like it's all about the models, it's all about the models, and that's not really what it's about. And what it comes down to is once you suddenly realized, oh my gosh, this power that you get from this intelligence and what you could do with it, where it's really more elevating human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. And that's why whenever we hear AI, we always think of like, well, it's really augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's really what we've been focusing in on. And that moved us into very quickly about 3 years or four, maybe it was 3 years ago, Yancey, where we suddenly discovered, holy crap, if you save the process and what now they're calling agents today, um, you you just basically gave away an individual's intellect from a standpoint of their intuition and their experience and their value in the market. And that right away, when Yancey and I saw that, we're like, this cannot be what our solution is because you can't give a business that power. You can't give one company who owns a model that power. Because what's left for the humans? What's left for us? What's left for the individual who now just lost their monetary value in the market to make their family's income, right? And both of us have kids, and that's when both of us were like, "Holy crap, there has to be a better way for humans to interact, for not the few to own it all, and then the majority being more part of it all."
It's absolutely true. At this point, it's one of the heated debates online on LinkedIn. Everyone's going nuts. Like, is AI gonna take our jobs and everything? So, What's your perspective on that? Because I feel you have extreme passion towards augmenting humans with AI instead of replacing them, right? So, how did you come up with an interesting and creative idea to kind of solve this?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on Chris real quick, I mean, that moment of clicking that, where does the human stand 5, 10 years, like when these automations happen and like that's always been like a concern with me and like my child's future, my bonus daughter's future. Like, what world do they live in when that's a reality? And I look at humans as individuals and we think of our like private, we all seek purpose, right? And if we're all on universal pay and we're just kind of like day in, day out, like what's our purpose, right? And then looking at the solution that we've created and what we're trying to do is put the human with AI. So AI is great and, it can do a lot of things, right? But I think with DeepMind and with the AlphaGo, like an average human playing AlphaGo with AI is going to be like, I think it's AlphaGo. It's going to beat a master at that game. Just the average guy with AI is going to beat the master at that game, right? So my thing is always like the human plus AI is always going to be greater than AI. So how do we pair the human's individual personality, the way they do things, their creativity? How do we blend that together and serve it up in a way that keeps the human in the loop? Maybe it's not a 9 to 5 job. Maybe somebody's working and creating this we call motifs or brains. Maybe it's a subscription model, right? Your intelligence, the way you do things, like maybe that's how we keep the human in the loop, keep them in the purpose, like, and that's what I strive to do. That we're doing, we will do.
But yes, if like, to that point, and like kind of, I think what it came down to, that aha moment of like what he's really getting at is if you look at agents today, and I know this is kind of indirectly to what you asked, but like if you look at agents today and really understand what you're giving away when you interact with AI right now, even ChatGPT, even any of those, and when you're going there and you're interacting with them, the reason it's free or the reason it's so cheap isn't because they care about what you do with it. It's about the fact of training their own models, their main model based on your intentions, because that's what's left. Let's be honest. This isn't about data anymore. And that's what everyone thinks it is. But everyone's business models that they're building today within these verticals and around AI is around data or consumption or this. But that's the problem. That's a 30-year-old business model that Apple and everyone else came out with when they figured out how to actually change how the phone worked, right? And suddenly when that aha moment came off, and all of us used to get phone book thrown on our front porch every single like year when I was younger. No one cared about their data at that point because it wasn't a business model. But the moment it did and everyone wised up to it, they realized, holy crap, they're literally taking my data and they're profiting on it,
Yeah.
which is mine, right? And that's where everyone thinks like it's all about the data. It's not. It's about your intentions, your interactions, your intuition of how you use the data. That's more valuable. And so what's going on is these larger companies, and they're circling around it. They're trying to figure out how to own it all. And by owning it all, what's left for everyone? And what I mean by that, the infrastructure, the model, the access, the control, knowledge. That's how you control the mass of knowledge. If you control the model, that's LLMs today. So when you look at it in that way, what we suddenly saw was like, holy crap, what we really need is to use AI to protect the individual from their identity or their differentiator being stolen by these models. So if you allow for the workforce to become what Yancey's talking about, really what we're getting down to is a system that's a federated approach that the business owns and operates. But really the models that run it from an AI standpoint aren't about the data being trained in it. It's about how they access it and stream it to the end user from the endpoint all the way to the visualization to get that intelligence. But the way, Mark, you see it, the way Yancey sees it, the way I do is different. And that's why all these solutions are never one answer to all, which is kind of how the application world evolved to where there's so many different vertical applications. So if you look at it in that way, if you're able to access data, drive insights, and apply existing knowledge, what else do you need? Because that's exactly what applications are and databases and everything. It's just organizing that for the individual to have intelligence. Well, Yancey figured out how to serve it up from a user-centric standpoint. Now some of the interface molds to how that individual views it, how Mark, you view it, Yancey views it, I view it, to now allow for the individual to flow freely through the information to create their own, what we call motif of an understanding of a topic, a skill, a specialty, right? Well, that interaction belongs to the individual, not the data. The data could stay with the company. So if you separate the two and you're really getting down to where the individual owns how they mold through the data, almost like a tree logic of a workflow, right? And by that happening, Yancey came up with this great way of saying it's like bones and skins, right? Yancey, and I'll let you touch on this, but like really what it comes down to is that's what belongs to the individual to sell as a subscription to a company, to where then the company no longer is talking about employees, they're talking about subscription as intelligence, right?
Hmm.
And by doing it that way, they can now build intelligence off of how that one individual uniquely tailors or understands the data to the topic that they're trying to achieve.
Love it.
Professional
And
services.
yeah, this is amazing. So far, how has the market reacted? Like on the user side and on the client side, like what have you seen as patterns when you try to introduce this type of solution to this problem?
Well, we went through years of trying to get the market to understand a very complex a solution that at the end of the day, the tech was in the way. And what it comes down to is if you think of the physical world versus the digital world, all we're doing is we're allowing the physical world to continue into the digital world to where you still have the ability to walk away. And what is being taken from that is the ability for the employee, who, by the way, is doing this for every single company they work for right now, training the automation that will replace them and lay them off soon. And that's why the workforce is starting to show these signs. And the problem with that is we very quickly realized that, well, there's something called employment laws in way. There's employment agreements that are outdated. There's all kinds of things that go around this because it was built for the physical world, not the digital, right? So instead of fighting that fight and going down that the avenue, the way you go about it is we realized you had to monetize it in a way that it could scale rapidly. And by doing it through the way of picking in a market segment that pretty much was kind of in a way ignored, which is MSPs or CSPs, because everyone was building for the enterprises because they believed they had the money for the verticals of paying for AI. But what they really didn't understand, and the world I came from, was we already had that unified aspect of the old way of doing it. We had data lakes and everything else to unify data. And so the enterprises had a lot of the tools that were kind of be sold to them, but they're still trying to figure out how to actually have business impact. Well, the problem with enterprises is they're not exactly the first target you want because they're not the best clients. The best clients you want innovation, not button clickers, is is truly the SMBs, the small and medium sized businesses, because those are the ones that have to operate in a way that allows for them to truly have to innovate in real time to survive, not just survive from automation, but survive from innovation to beat the bigger guys. So we quickly learned fast that that's our market that we need to target. And so we had to refactor a whole solution or re-architect it to get to a price point that's entry level for them to even be able to obtain it. Because everyone else, if you remember, is all about consumption or outcomes or whatever you want to call it. But really where their mechanism that's holding them back comes down to the tech debt. It comes down to the expensive cost of training models. Well, that's where Yancey came up with the brilliant idea of removing that. And by doing that, what we're really talking about is streaming the data to the individual, which is allowing for the individual to now get AI, augmented intelligence, a system, and a company gets it too at a flat economics, meaning it's at a flat cost. You don't have to worry about all of this other consumption or how much is going to cost me to train this or do this. It comes down to now it's all about I just need to find the professional services of the expertise I need to now be able to talk to it to figure out how it works with my data.
Right, right. And do you feel like you already found the product market fit, or you're still in the process within your journey?
We have definitely found our product market fit, because if you also look at the MSP market, they are the spitting image of what everyone is screaming towards, and when no one even realizes it. It blows my mind as I come from integrators. What do we sell? We sell professional services. What is professional services? People. So if I'm building AI to eliminate my large bill rates, which I make so much margin on, what is my business model now? Because at that point, I just lost my fluffy margins and my big contracts to an agent that's just automating it at a commodity level on the same logic as the foundational models as everyone else is doing it. So what are we screaming towards? A gray world. And the gray world we're screaming towards is what the federal government went through already, which was when they did LPTA, which is lowest price technically acceptable, and those bids. And what happened is they automated to the point where no innovation went into it. So they had a solution and they were stuck with it for a 2-year-old problem, right? That's exactly what the market's doing. The market right now is doing that, but who's experienced it and who wants to get out of it because they're losing their recurring revenue is the MSPs, managed service providers, or the cloud service providers, because all of them have basically killed each other to the point where they're trying to sell licenses. And now it's just a game of who has the cheapest cost of licenses. So who has marginally more? There goes their recurring revenue. Here comes AI, kills their professional services. So they can't even differentiate themselves from anything else. So they're begging for a way to find the ability to get reoccurring revenue to save their business models. So Maestro is built for the end product user, which is the businesses and individuals, but it enables the competition to go back to the level where it belongs, not the license. License is flat. What it comes down to is the professional services that now can be resold through the marketplace. That is where the competition now freely flows like it does in the physical world.
No, it's really interesting. Thanks for this transparent and candid approach that you're describing here. And for the founders that are watching in, how would you tell that you'd have an unfair advantage in this type of niche or industry? Like if they're also building AI-driven applications and software, like how did you go about it to carve out your own unfair advantage in this type of field?
Well, we'll get to that in 1 second. Let me just say something to them to that point. Maestro's built from a way, and if you think about it from a founder standpoint, everyone understands this is you become obsessed, you become passionate, you become this is what it has to be, right? And by going down that path, your dream sometimes takes away other people's dreams because they're forced to live within it. And what Maestro is, and what Yancey and I have done here, is we built it where everyone can dream within it. So everyone who's building in this AI race or these agents or so forth, they understand this. It's workflows, it's processes, and if those processes are like done in the aspect of Maestro's view or and so forth, it's inviting to them to dream within Maestro to where they're not worried about the tech debt because they're building within a business framework. And oh, by the way, every instance that an individual has or a company has is theirs. They're not relying on us. We don't own that. They do. And by doing it that way, what we've done is decouple the data and the handcuffs of these of people having to work within a system as a business model, keeping them there to where they actually can dream what they want to build and focus on the aspect of how it enables the customer, the experience. And that's where we knew that it had to go. So everyone out there who's built an AI agent, productivity app, we've built Maestro in a way that enables you to access that customer base that our MSP to distribution model, because we're a wholesale business model, is going to capture for us. So within that, just in the US alone, you're looking at 50,000 MSP providers who are servicing the 10 million SMBs of the United States.
And for
But the
those who don't
best,
know, what's an MSP, for example, those that are watching?
um, a managed service provider, which in essence is a professional service company,
Right. There you go. So
which
just in case for those that don't know, because you've mentioned it a lot, I think it's important just to make this distinction. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. And if there's other acronyms, because you know how this world is,
Yeah.
tell me. But But what we've done is we built for the European market, right? And by building for the European market, what we really built for is how Europeans see AI. And there's three kind of regions of how they see it, right? Europe sees it in a way of like it should protect the individual, right? And when you look at Asia, Asia looks at it as almost like it should be used to watch the individual. right?
Interesting.
Or monitor the individual. And you look at the US, it's just the Wild West, and the five big tech companies are running the show, right?
Yeah,
And so when you think of it in that way, what we did is we built for the most conservative market to where we believe that that betters humanity versus the markets that just want to make money.
I
And
love
I
it.
think that it's very easy to get lost in that truth. And what I'm really trying to hammer down is Maestro's built so everyone can dream within it to enable everything you've already done today to now monetize into a way to sell to a customer base that will be there for you to sell to.
No, this is great. This is great, and the mission behind it's definitely pro-human. There are startups out there that doing defense tech and startups that are weaponizing AI. From what I understand, you're on the completely opposite pole of the whole effort. So this is a great and a beautiful way of contributing to the ecosystem. And this is an outlandish question, but I'm just curious. Like, if you had 500K in the bank personally, would you still raise the funds that you went after with the seed round, or would you bootstrap your way to a bigger round?
If you want me, in my opinion, and the reason we've gone the route we went, don't get me wrong, we went out to Silicon Valley. We went out to the topics of the big VCs and pitched this many different times in different ways, different lenses, different kinds of like hooks, right? But but at the end of the day, what it came down to is we understood that to accomplish a mission that we're talking about or a vision that we're talking about, we have to be very careful who's on the cap table. And by going about that route, that we could do it in the vision and the mission that we deem that we can keep pure. And what I mean by that is if you build a system, and yes, you can touch on this too, but as you talked about it, but if you build a system to where it's built for the individual, then you've solved every problem that a business experiences too. And it protects the individual, but it's also protecting the business. But by doing it that way, you don't you don't push in greedy monetization to just make a buck. You let it organically evolve to be the workforce of tomorrow to allow for the individuals to dream with that.
I love it. Absolutely. And I have a quick question there for the founders watching that are also building AI startups, just to motivate them just a bit. Do you remember how many no's did you receive to finally get to the yeses?
We still receive notes all the time, and I know you could I mean even today, what it comes down to is the money that we've raised was the bootstrapping logic to what we needed to get to. We've turned down many revenue agreements because at the end
Mm,
of the day, what we saw was it takes away from the
yeah,
core focus of what we're trying to get to, and we realized that if you wrap it in a way that it can be monetized for mass scale and be able to launch it to distributors, to wholesalers, from a wholesaler approach to the actual reseller logic, what you're doing is you're enrolling the ecosystem to be invested into the solutions and then have the professional services be the competition of how they all compete with each other.
bam.
Um,
Completely
and
different approach. Yeah,
right. But if you look at it that way, back to your original question about moats, systems today are not defensible because of what you can
right.
do with detective, right? So the differentiators isn't your model, isn't this, isn't that, because someone can mimic it. So what it comes down to is it's the unique interactions of the human being that's the defensibility. It's the human and the way they use their data becomes the defensibility. So if you look at it in that way and think of exactly what that goes against or what they're trying to take to be able to train their models, and only a matter of time that they raise the price to access those, your tech debt's to them now. They just have to raise the price once they have it. So at the end of the day, what you're building within the ecosystem of what you're working towards is within the business model they told you that you have to play in. Step outside the box. That's what I
Right.
said.
I think the founders are gonna find this definitely valuable as advice. Sorry, Yancey, you
Well,
wanted
yeah, I was
to
gonna
pitch in.
piggyback off of Chris's box's comment. It's like if I had 5K in a bank, or if I can receive like millions, like if moving towards monetary goal is your passion, starting a business, like doing what we're doing, is not a quick endeavor. I mean, you can obviously make millions. But I've always told Chris, and I believe in this so much that as long as they're the McDonald's and I have a laptop and an internet connection, that's all I need. Because
There you go.
I believe so much in like where the future's going and in the individual that like, I'm not looking for the next $500 million, billion-dollar unicorn and all that stuff. If you truly want to, it's not my saying, but if for something to change, someone has to really care a lot, right? So maybe I'm someone that I'm not trying to be grandiose with that, but like I think we should start focusing on the individual and how much it's monetized off of us. Like even these game apps that you play, like if it's free, you're the product. And
Right.
honestly,
Oh,
like it's great. That's a great way to make money, but I don't want to be a product for like someone to make billions off of just to turn around and replace me. So that's that little chip. But yeah, I mean, that's my whole like revolution talks, So, but Chris, he sees the business in that light where like he understands that side of the field. If you want to talk code, tech, nerdy, I'm here. So like far as like the money and projections and all that jazz, I leave it up to his side. I'm more about the ethos and passion. Yeah.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that's how we enroll the best developers, because at the end of the day, the developers are seeing is they're feeling it right now. And the funny thing is like everyone's in an uproar talking about how much like, oh, Meta's stealing all these top people and everything else, and looking at like this, and these companies are getting these people and that. And it's funny because everyone loves like symbols, right? And that's what humans love to like always look at. And when you think of it, those people are symbols of those companies, of the direction they've gone in, but they're playing a game that they've kind of monetized from a standpoint of multiple different industries. So they're pot committed at that point. And so when they're pot committed, they're never going to build in a direction that upsets that pot that they built, right? Oh, by the way, we need data centers and we need this. Well, the funny thing is we stopped hearing about data centers and all the investments they put into them. And what happened to that? Because what that really was the inferencing logic of trying to control whose network everything went through, or whose data center of all the models are being trained and gone through. But the reality is now that's people have shown that you can democratize how that's done, and you don't need to train models. And the game's not about models anymore. It's about how you actually used it, and how you get the humans to come to you to use and build that. And so in essence, when we look at it that way, I'm a firm believer that, and I think it was Steve Jobs for this, is the computer is like probably one of the best inventions ever made, right? And we still don't even know how that bell curve is going to go out, and how that bell curve is going right now, because of how we've capitalized or how we've monetized, and the corporations want to make money. It's pushing it in to the point where it's going to come in, and it's going to have to be good for humanity, because it's going to implode. It's going to make us all have problems to the value and everything Yancey was talking about before, our purpose. So what we believe is Maestro, it isn't about the money, it's about pushing that back out to where humanity can actually see where this can go, where the system and intelligence is not the few, it's collective. And by having collective intelligence, you then suddenly get into a realm that allows for what the computer can be of the future, the operating system of the future is to the limits of the human's imagination of their intelligence. It's just a
yes.
tool.
Absolutely. And I already got tons of questions just right here. So I'm just curious, before we go forward, do you remember approximately how many refusals did you get from investors when you were trying to get the seed round?
Hundreds. I don't know,
100.
Yancey, how many, probably,
Approximately.
probably a
Yeah, I don't
couple,
have a list or kept count. I know they say do that, but um, yeah, I mean, it didn't necessarily say no, but maybe come back later.
Uh-huh.
or they
So
just didn't give us a good offer, or they wanted too much, or they wanted like we played all around with all that. But I
Or
think, yeah.
I was gonna say, or you get the ones that like just completely don't understand it and think it's a inventory system for camera systems.
They
Yeah,
don't
Like,
understand.
yeah,
They
yeah.
really
yeah,
don't get it.
exactly. Yeah, I completely missed the
Interesting.
block. Yeah.
But see,
Well,
but that's the problem though, because what they teach you to do is they teach you to build in a vertical and be focused. But what they're really lying to you about, and what they're not really getting to the nut of is that's great, but that's great for them to lower their risk to invest into the business, right? Versus you now tailoring your whole dream to what they think is an MBA approach to the world that's not actually applicable to how the real world works. And so when you start doing these decks and start pitching it, it's like you can throw buzzwords and you can say everything you want, but there's two optics. And this is the thing with the founders that you guys obviously understand or need to learn real fast is there's the optics to what you say to stakeholders versus the optics to what you're going to actually do. And what I mean by that is when you look at how these investment firms and everyone else is looking to invest, they have their goals, they have their buzzwords, they have their vision of what they think the market's going to be. But the funny thing is they're not the ones ever executing it or even doing it. They're just researching. And so
yeah.
when it comes down to it, they're going to put you in a box based on what they think is a bet. It's all just rolling the dice, right? But your dream and what you want to build doesn't fit in a box because it's becoming something that's outside of the norm of what everyone else is doing. And that's what makes it special to where the way you present it becomes very hard because it becomes into the dream of how you see it versus the dream of how an MBA person sees it.
Oh my God,
It
you
doesn't
hit
work.
it right on the nail. Absolutely. And I think yeah, Jens, yeah, tell us what you're thinking. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, down in, like, in the past, like having a solid ethos and a solid vision of what you want to do is everything, because you're going to hit that one person that's going to promise all of this stuff. And if you just, cater to, ports like ships, doing ship and delivery and stuff, or supply chain, if you go chasing down these individual, like, specific points where you think there's going to be a fish that you can catch there, and you drive away from that ethos, at the end of the day, it just weakens and lessens that vision. And I think, I mean, we've fallen into that trap before and gone, like, down certain
Hmm.
roads that maybe we shouldn't have, chasing that
C-
opportunity.
Can you unbox that
But
just a bit?
yeah,
What you just said, like this is interesting. So you're saying you already tried that and you fell into a trap. So a lot of founders do fall in traps. What
mhm.
happened to you guys?
Well, see, like, you come up with the vision and you, like, and you have a, they say be able to pivot. That's great, right? Always be able to pivot, because the markets are going to shift, and, like, there's this layer of, like, the economy or the way people perceive certain things that shift. But when, as you're going and you're talking to, like, investors or people that are interested and say, hey, I can, put you, give you, like, X amount of money or sell X amount of products or whatever. If you kind of nudge it towards, like, like in Maestro, like, at one point where it was like we were going after a goal for the individual and making, like, ways to use universalized data and coupling it with AI to create, like, your own intelligence. Like, that was, like, kind of like our ethos and where we go. But, like, you get caught up on these, like, carrots. I always put a carrot, like, you know, now we're shifting, like, oh well, we can make this a great defense contract, like, application. So let's shift and start trying to go that way. And you
Hmm.
keep chasing these little trails, right? And these little deviations. And that just makes that pathway to get to where you're going that much longer, because at the end of the day, stick to your vision, stick to your ethos, but be able to pivot in a way that stays in line with that.
And do you feel like you pivoted a few times since you started? And
Absolutely.
yeah, C- c-
Absolutely.
can you share
And
like the biggest
we
pivots? Yeah.
pivoted and we shifted focus and whatnot. Like, so, like, when we first were going at this was, like, about 5 years ago. ChatGPT was, like, what, 2.5? It was, yeah, it was not even a thing, right? And it was just AI.
Right.
And our whole focus was on this, like,
Mhm.
data universalization, right? Kind of like a translator from data. How do we drop that veil between, like, let's just say, with video, right? You got a .mov, you got a AVI, you have all these formats, right? And then you have like I think Europeans on like Pascs, some not an NTS. I forget the formatting, right? But what I'm talking about is like the format of how video is sent to you. If your player doesn't support MOV, now you gotta go download another player, right?
Yeah.
Something that can talk to it, like in a language sense. But as soon as you create something that universalizes data and is able to understand, comprehend, and deliver intelligence, like that was our initial like goal, right? Just to
Hmm.
unify data, break down data silos, and bring it to you in a universalized way, and then plug it into whatever system you're going to. And as AI progressed, like these language models that we saw, well, we got this powerful ingestion engine that does this. Instead of plugging it into a system, our pivot was that, instead of plugging it in systems and giving them a way to interact with the language model and that whatnot, we pivoted into integrating the individual to have access to this vast dataverse within an
Oh,
ecosystem, right? To then
right, right. Very
so
natural
like,
as a pivot. Yeah, absolutely.
oh yeah, it's very natural as a pivot. It felt right and it kept with our ethos. And yeah, it wasn't like a pointed IP camera inventory tracking machine. Which yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah.
But what you're getting to that logic the reason that happened to us, and it's probably happened to a lot of founders, is you get I think the problem is this, and this is my opinion, but I come from the integrator world. So I came from the professional services and the consulting, the high powered guns you bring in to tell you what to do. Well, it was fun, and we won very large bids and billion-dollar programs across federal government for professional services, building solutions. But here's the thing: I never got to execute them. So I never had to live with those freaking decisions that I made or the decisions that the team made as we built it out. And to be honest with you, when the rubber hits the road, it never went out that way. It never was executed that way. And the problem is when you bring in all these people who tell you they can help you fundraise, they can help you do this, they give you a percentage of your company, do this and that. And we've gone down roads like that already and learned the rough the r- the wrong way to do it. And it's that because what it comes down to is these individuals, their business is to sell you, right? But what they're really doing at the end of the day is giving you NBA logic to how an investor is going to look at you to where all they're doing is reshaping the image of what you have in a deck to how they want to sell it to the VC they know. And by doing it that way, they're convincing you that you're doing it the wrong way. You really weren't. You just weren't in the optics of how they knew they could sell it to this person or that person. And that became the most frustrating part because it was like all we keep doing is revamping a deck with the same topics, and you're just taking out what you think matters to you versus what actually matters to our ethos and what it is. And you're going to put us with an investor that is a short-term investor in a way of where they're going to force us to sell to someone big eventually because if we take their money, there's always games to be played on the board, right? And so at the end of the day, by wising up and realizing that the problem be careful who you take advice from. Because if you take advice from the wrong person, they can be what is the difference between your dream becoming reality versus not. And we learn this so many different ways because they
Can
don't have
you
to
can
live
you
with
tell
it.
us like just a few ways that you've learned it? I'm just really curious, and I think the founders also listening in. If you share that, I think it's gold.
I I mean the biggest one I would say probably was the lesson learned was when we I'll go back to the earlier days, Yancey, where we were out in Silicon Valley and we were pitching to VCs out in Silicon Valley, and they're like, "Oh, just show traction." And we're like, "Well, we don't have traction because we're doing our alpha and beta pilots." And they're like, "Oh, well, just ship the code over to India and get them to finish it out and send it back, right?" Well, no, because we're not building some simplistic solution that's going to just be coded out with what's there today. It's we're solving real problems to how you actually can make the interface instead of have to receive a data in that format, actually build what it wants based on the data that it gets. Reverse it, right? Well, you can't get that out of just building code. But what we just learned was the business model out in Silicon Valley was the good old boys of the network, and some will probably not like me for this, but they were basically just using their buddies to get subscriptions to, in essence, of a product that would never scale because it was built that vertical, but they just raised $20 million in their next unicorn or whatever they want to call themselves. But now you never heard of them today because they went out of business. But that was a way for the money to stay within the flow. And so if you really step back, and as a founder, you know this, it's all about how you monetize and build business models and wrap it. understand who you're talking to's business model, and you'll very quickly get what they want and why they want it.
Wow, that's cold, hard truth. Yeah.
Being a gold, like, yeah, you can chase the beautiful rainbow. You're never going to catch it. So why don't you just collect the water, That way, when you get thirsty, you can at least drink and keep
Yeah,
going. Yeah.
absolutely. I think it's great advice because a lot of founders get tangled up with just, a little term sheet. It makes people go crazy, even if the terms suck, right? They sometimes they accept it. So, do you feel like raising for you it enabled you to build faster at this point?
The funny part about that is it's like we had a large team and we were building, and Yancey, you I think have we built it, and yet you did it from a standpoint of like components, and then you put it together in a way. But in a way, we've made more progress because if you think of the complexity of that dream of what we're talking about, it's completely a paradigm to how everyone else is working with AI. So the problem is when you get into that realm, money becomes the issue of trying to add labor when you don't need to add labor, and you
Hmm.
suddenly have it there to do that. And I think you're taught, and if you look at like the corporate world, right, and this is how it used to be, is it's like every business and these big ones were about how many people work for me, right? How many people are under me? How many people report to me? And so the VCs are kind of the same way as like they always ask, how large are you? How big is this? But suddenly now they're like, oh, you're only a couple people. That's beautiful because that's the way we want to go. Because
Yeah.
the model suddenly showed them that they don't have to be these giant organizations to accomplish what you can accomplish with a few now. And so I think the biggest lesson learned that we had was money's great and good, but if you learn how to bootstrap first and understand that even when you're large, you continue to bootstrap from a standpoint of what matters to the vision and the mission, it will help you evaluate your problems differently. And there's a whole bunch of people out there talk about how to actually to do that. But and what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is is really to what matters, to what's going to move the needle today, not what's going to move the needle tomorrow or this and that. And a lot of capital that came at us, they're like, oh, what are you going to go do with it? What are you going to do with this? What are you gonna do that? And of course we had answers for it. But at the end of the day, what we really were seeing was like, all right, we're just tired of working multiple jobs, doing multiple different things. We want to focus solely on the mission and everything else. So it's really just we just need to sustain our own livelihoods and be able to bring in the right talent to surround us. And honestly, a core team of a couple people is your company. And when you look at it in that way, you don't need 50 people or 100 people or think that you need all these developers to do what you need to do. You just need to understand that taking money is not a milestone. It's a mechanism for how you get capital. It's not celebrate about. And the funny part is like you see all these postings about all this money that companies get and everything else. The the problem is now they're slave or a shouldn't say that, but they're kind of they have to operate within that business of how they got and took that money to where now their dream usually dies or the founder's giving away too much. And
Hmm.
I think that the big corporate worlds of yesterday, of how many people work for me, and it shows you how important I am. If you let your ego go and don't think it that way, and you think about it from a standpoint of what is the minimum amount I need to just get to this to actually start selling, that's when you celebrate. When you
I'm
when you
curious.
actually sell.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's good to take him. Like you do need to support yourself and whatnot. So we're totally not saying like don't take funding away. We've taken it, but there's something to be said about keeping that hunger. That hunger, like that drives you. You gotta like stay hungry. Like you get all this money and you're like, oh, I can sit back, hand out to a bunch of developers or hand out to a bunch of people. And all of a sudden your dreams like out left field. And you're sitting there like behind the bench, like, what the hell? You know, wondering where it went. Now you're trying to bring it back in. So yes, from investment wise and like taking money, like take what you need. Don't take more than you need because you're always going to be chasing that number. That next round's going to have to be bigger. And if you don't like create that or hit that, then you're not moving forward. So like anybody that's doing this and they truly want to do it and they truly want to like create this thing, whatever they're developing, whatever they're selling, whatever whatever is at their core, what this provides for them, stay hungry because that's going to keep you moving.
That's quite a pattern that we see in a lot of startups that actually succeed. You know, this hunger factor is huge. When you think about it, if well, you know how many startups raised huge capital and just disappeared out of the ecosystem, right? Like it happens, and it's probably a hunger issue also. And I'm curious, pre-funding, while you were kind of bootstrapped and building everything, can you recount the most difficult parts that you went through in your journey so far?
Well, if I'm being honest, being a 30-year-old man living in your mom's basement, talking to people that are making millions
Yeah.
of dollars, and I'm like, if they only knew where I was at right now when I was pushing,
But now
I don't know
life's
if they'd be
different.
talking to me. But that's just taking the humility out of it, right? And just being wide open. I think that was my hardest time, like having a son and you know, talking to your friends, like, yeah, like you ever watch movie has Will Ferrell in it,
But
he's like living in the basement of his house or something like that. I
but
forget what movie it is.
Yancey,
Step Brother, yeah. And it's like,
uh,
oh, I'm that guy.
right? But you were that guy. Yancey, the thing is, huge amounts of founders are currently in the situations that you guys were facing, right? Like, uh, they have this type of difficulty, and they're trying to get out. But you guys made it. You know that's the motivating factor. At the end of the day, you're funded. You know you can build up the dream that you've always been passionate about. And this is the crazy thing at this point. And Chris, what about you? What were the lowest moments?
I think I think the biggest thing I learned in this whole thing and why if I ever was asked to do this again, I would never do it, to be honest with you, because it's what it comes down to is it's our it's some people say is but the superpower is like being naive, right? And you and you if you I'm a very optimistic person. Nancy will tell you that. Like some like me, like and that's my superpower because I'm always able to turn a situation to get out of it from a standpoint of being a problem solver and be optimistic about the outcomes, right? And you'll be surprised how you can be in the darkest, worst moment and somehow get out of it because you just kept moving. And what I think a lot of people do is just stop and they try and they get it's processed by an like they just continuously try to like just process like I should do this, I should do that, just do something. And and the funny thing is like in this journey, when I going through this journey is like trying to balance that with another job, with with everything that has to get done with a little bit of labor, but like it's it's rewarding when it happens. It's rewarding when it's fun and enjoy the accomplishments and don't get lost in all the rest that has to get done. Because that up you get is everything. When you have that up, it enjoy it. Don't just move on very fast because you have to recognize, holy crap, look what I accomplished already. And maybe it's not to where everyone else cares, but it's big to you. And that's something people get lost in where they're always trying to impress someone. You have to be humble in this. You have to understand that, like, at the end of the day, it's not about impressing. You know how many times I've told like family members and friends that, oh, we're going to market, we're going to market. And 2 years later, I'm still not in the market because we're monetizing. And so it's kind of like it's it's understanding that good things take time. And I have no idea where this rocket ship's about to go, but the way that we're about to launch into the market and the scale that we're about to do, which starts August 1, and saying this on this thing, hopefully it starts August 1, but it's all looking like that. But that's what I'm getting at. Is like you never know what's going to change and what happens. But if you keep moving and you keep pushing, you'll be amazed on what you can get to.
Yeah. Perseverance is everything. And having something that you believe in, you need that to persevere because you're not going to get past it unless you're You believe in things. If you don't believe in it, like, it is just some, like, idea that just came out of the blue and you're like, "Oh, I make $1 million." As soon as you hit that freaking obstacle, which is the way, I don't know if anybody's read that book, but they stop, right? But, like, you hit an obstacle, you get beat down, but you get up, and you look at a problem. The only problems we had, I would say, I wouldn't call them problems, I would call them ways to find solutions, right? Because, you know, um, and yeah, perseverance in tune with what Chris said, being naive. Because honestly, like, how do you create something new if it's never been created? You know, how do I know that someone's going to
Absolutely.
want this if it's never been created?
Exactly. And
That's a scary moment. Like the first time someone's playing with what you built and to hear their reaction. I mean, sometimes people get stuck on just not even wanting to do that because they don't think it's good enough yet. But you'll be surprised.
Yeah, I've struggled with that. Like, doing something that you developed, like, in front of a group, you're naked. You're going to get, like, criticized for this, that, and the other. I don't know how many times I've showed the back end code wise, and they're like, "Well, where's the interface? I just see a bunch of code." I'm like, "But you see what it's doing?" No, no, it's got to be UI. I got to see it. And like you're gonna hit that, and but just persevering through it all.
But yeah, see, but yeah, see, that but yeah, see, that's because most people can't dream or visualize what that back end is saying, what it could produce and actually be if it had a UI. And I think what a lot of people get lost in is thinking like that a product has to be perfect before it goes to market. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to you'll be surprised how much pivots, changes, and everything you do from a product. I mean, shoot, Yancey and I just last night had that aha moment of like, why didn't you see this? Because you have to play with it and work with it. And I think most people don't get that when you take funding you don't need, or if that is all your goal is, you're never going to succeed because it's just going to become that little snippet of what it could have been, and it's never going to grow bigger.
I think you definitely, yeah, you're hitting it straight on the head there. And the thing is, you're talking about perseverance. If we look at the numbers, so, you raised 1.5 mil and you got approximately 100 no's, or, you skipped misfit investor meetings and all that. So that's actually 1.5 mil, divide this by 100. Each no or misfit equals 15K. This is important. It's important. And I think founders need to run after those no's.
Well, but think of this. All those no's got us to understand that distribution was everything because it's all about how you get the product to the end user um, implementation and the cost of it. And if you remove all that, our distribution agreement that we just signed is for 70,000 units of MSTRO within this year. What that equals out to is what 28.5 million monthly reoccurring revenue that we're going to hit. And that's just the start of one distributor. That's just the US. And so, and if you look at it from that standpoint, the reason we're going to hit these numbers is because what we're doing is we're going from a wholesale business approach instead of a one-off to where we're leveraging what's in place today. There's so much there from the MSP, and they already have the agreements in place with these customers, right? So all we're doing is slipping right in our product and then allowing them to do what they do best to build professional services on it. And that's where they can jump charge. But what we just did is gave them the ability to make recurring revenue. But that number, just think about that. Monthly reoccurring 28 million. And that's just the beginning in US. Europe, we're coming out in the what is it? 2 different regions that we selected. We're in negotiations with distribution partners out there too. And those are gonna just triple that, quadruple that. But but we're at a 98% margin, guys.
It's
This is a
completely
copy paste
nuts.
solution. Yeah.
I have no words at this point because, a lot of founders struggle with their revenue models. They're even trying to understand how the hell, even post raise, how do they find the initial clients? They don't even know, right? Versus you guys had this approach. You're coming, from the back of the market, capturing the MSP side of things, and then going to the resellers, and then, they're gonna deploy this to their clients and all that. So there's a lot of things that you've talked about that is complete gold for the audience at this point. And I'm just curious, after the raise, what process broke, if anything did, and how did you fix that?
Process growth, communication. I'm gonna say like from my end with developers, like the mechanism for communicating and keeping everybody in line. And I say that from a developer standpoint because from developers, we'll leverage Slack or our GitHub accounts and message through that or like Teams or whatnot. But from a corporate side, not like to show like what's going on down in the trenches, like that messaging, and we all know what's going on, but being able to portray that communication to say C-suite or like to Chris even or to Patrick is another one of our guys, being able to portray like what's going on in the trenches and how they translate like for the like financial guys and like for the like even like see, I had to take myself out of it because as like a CTO and how to maneuver a company, I would probably be asking for the same report, like what's going on, how's it moving, what's the direction, and like so that communication and goal alignment or like product development alignment. Um, I'd say it broke because um going from like a few people to like a larger team, like you know um it wasn't in place, I would say, and the way it needed to be. Yeah, it's very hard to enroll a vision. Very, very something that's, like, so paradigm shifting, like, "Oh, we're gonna, allow people to sell human their individual intelligence as a subscription." Like, tell another developer that, like, they're very, like, rigid and analytic in how they think through as where, like me and Chris, we see that, and it's kinda like a flower opens up, and there's all these possibilities, and there's this universe of, like, taken from the stars as we will, and a programmer's like, "Well, I have this package that I have to use, and, well, if I use this language, well, that kinda enters this," and, like, they're, like, very, like, structured and rigid in the way, and so the communication is a thing, and I always, like, have a saying is, like, "We're building what into what," like, you don't know what we're building from into what. So I kinda and I don't say that we don't know that, I'm just saying that from a creative standpoint to have that point of mind. Because if you know, like, what you're creating to, then you know what you need. If you know what you have, you know how to create too. But if you're creating what into what, open your mind up, kinda think outside of what's possible. So, yeah, communication, I know I'm kind of dragging it out, and it kinda brings me in another thing is that don't let linear innovation cloud your direction. And what I mean by that is that in the early 1800s when the hot air balloon came about, they asked people to do a projection of the year 2000. And the picture that they had for the future was everybody's gonna have their own balloon. We're all gonna be floating around in balloons because the hot air balloon was the hot new thing, and it was just for the few, but now everybody's gonna have a balloon, and then here comes a car, right? So, like, those projections that everybody's gonna have a balloon was, like, very linear to like what we have now and what it's going to be. So they took that linear progression of trying to be, I guess the future or create something innovative. And that is not usually how innovation happens. Usually it's something out in left field that you ain't ever heard of that has a new perspective on something completely new. So what into what? So communication.
Love it. And Chris, I have a question. Currently, on the operations side, like post raise, did you change your mindset to try to move the needle a little bit, in the day-to-day ops, or has there been any adjustments maybe that other founders can learn from at this stage?
Um, if you take every day, I mean, here's the thing, and my wife gets on me about this all the time. Is like, well, I thought you're doing this. I thought you're doing it this way or that way or this way,
That's the
and
second
really,
boss.
yeah, that's correct. And especially when you're doing something like this, everyone probably gets that if they have that, where it's like if they're not believing what you're about to do, then you're in trouble. So, but I think what it comes down to is even though it seems like to someone who's in the outside that the vision keeps changing to how we're going to monetize or how we're going to go to market or what this is. It wasn't that. It was truly actually us refining and getting smarter. And you have to remember that the way you see it is because you're so dang close to the fire and what it is that others will never get there. And how many times we've explained Maestro to so many different people on this journey. We think they're there, and then the next day they say something, we're like, that what? How do we get back to this? And so it's kind of like the operations. It's finding like minds that are skilled at what they do, and the friction and the bumping against each other is what makes the special sauce of how we monetize this to a crazy way. And then we brought on Patrick, who's from the Netherlands, who's amazing. Like, he used to run Dell, who was from Dell and data centers and did all that in the Europe area. Then he used to be with Luis Web and run their global operations. But he was a rocket scientist at the end of the day. And so the perspective he brings into his the view of the world is just it just bumps against ours, and it just creates magic from that standpoint. And then Cooley, who's from San Francisco and does basically law. And like, he came in and he helped monetize our legal agreements, which our distribution agreements are 33 pages plus. I mean, and then your VAR agreement. I mean, you get exhausted because there's so many different steps. But if you love working with them and everyone's ideas come to the table and they feel like they actually can contribute and you're not dictating, you'll be surprised the magic you create.
My God, no, definitely gold again, right there, dropping gold. And I'm curious if you could whisper one thing to yourself, like from day one of building Maestro, um, what would you say to yourself?
Exercise, eat better, because it's going to be a long ride. Actually, no. I'm gonna steal one from Palacholo. I could probably butcher his name, from The Alchemist. You know, when he tests the fable where the king tests him to hold a spoon of oil and walk around the palace and without dropping the spoon, anything in a spoon, right? I'm butchering it, but and he walks around and he gets back and he's like still concentrated on the spoon, and he makes sure he doesn't spill anything. And he gets back and he's like, well, what's the meaning of life? And the king tells him, he's like, well, did you notice all the beautiful pillars, the pictures, and all that stuff, right? And he's like, no, I was focusing on the spoon and I didn't want to spill it. Well, he's like, sometimes you got to stop and look around and take that time to stop and look around, because you could be so focused on a thing and be so oblivious of what's going around. So take time to stop, pull back, and check out what's around, because you might be missing something.
Yeah, a lot of founders are knee deep when they're getting into this, and they completely forget that there's beautiful life around them. um, yeah, absolutely, and their families take a hit. There's huge sacrifices made also, right? Like to run a startup, and it's crazy stuff. Like people don't even get it at some point. And yeah, and Chris, what about you? What would you whisper to yourself on day one before building Maestro?
I mean, I don't even know. I hate there's so many lessons that were learned through this journey. It's crazy. And this journey's just getting started. I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, when I look at I think what it comes down to is just enjoy. Like, I would probably just tell myself, enjoy the small wins, because the small wins build up to big, big things. And I think the biggest thing I learned through this journey is, and it's funny because it's the industry I came from, is just be careful who you listen to. And don't believe just because someone else doesn't believe doesn't mean that you can't do it. And I think that obsession has to be big enough or great enough for what you're doing to be able to overcome the obstacles you're going to see. And at the end of the day, there's no quick get rich scheme. There's none of this. And it comes down to, like, in my opinion, your grit. And a lot of people don't have it. And if you can't handle that, and this is kind of why a lot of the the Ivy League, NBA kind of logic of the world never really creates the unicorns is because they don't have the ability to go through the pain and suffering it takes to make a revolutionary idea become reality.
Wow,
So believe in
I
yourself.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned you've heard, or you've learned a lot of lessons so far. Like, could you maybe pluck out a few more lessons? Because I definitely want to hear what you went through, and I'm sure that the founders that are listening in are also curious about that. So maybe you can drop like a few more bombs here.
Biggest one, don't look at fundraising as a milestone. It's not. Um, if you're building a product to just fundraise, you've already failed. Just remember that. Two would be, from my standpoint, is pick a team that you want to truly grow with and enjoy their company and enjoy problem solving with because you spend a heck of a lot of time with them. And frankly, that's the friction that's going to make the magic. And the other biggest thing is apologize to your families now because it's not fun being a founder.
Dope. I mean, yeah, always chasing that end goal to like, I mean, like reflecting on it, like I see my son in a lot of time that maybe I should have spent more time with. Like I don't know what I would say is, well, yeah, it's regret. It's always regret that like not spending the time, but I'm looking like as the future, like making up for it, being able to put him in a position to where he can follow his passions without that burden of like responsibility. Cause like of like, financial responsibility. Cause that's another thing is like with the hunger, I guess. Yeah. Is that like a lot of it is like you're gonna be alienated or you're gonna alienate yourself from your families and and that sucks and that looks like a horrible person. But at the end of the day, like in our hearts, it's like we do the thing for them. So it's like, like where do you draw that line and just be
That's
prepared
the
to
crazy part.
try to balance
You
and
know,
yes.
this is crazy, Yancey. What you're saying, it hits the hearts of a lot of founders, I'm sure, because they have girlfriends, they have kids and all that, and they're spending huge amounts of time on building something great. But unfortunately, in most cases, they're misunderstood by pretty much their friends, their family. Like people just don't get it sometimes. Some are lucky enough to be with people that do get them, but for the most part, a lot of startup founders are completely misunderstood. And for example, your girlfriend can think like, oh, you're alienating me. Why are you spending more time with your business? Am I, less important or whatever? But that's not true. You're building it for them, for you, for your clients, your future, for everyone's future. That's the crazy part, right? It's like a paradox.
Yep. Man, I know I was just gonna say like, yeah, I mean like it is a tragic story that like a lot of the passion behind of what we build and why we build it is part of the reason why fortunately not for me and but others I've seen is like they lose their girlfriends or they lose like, you know, like and it's the thing you're building for. And the tragic story is you're losing the thing you're building for by building the thing. Yeah. I word salad. But yeah, it's yeah, I forgot where I was going.
No, but I think it's a natural filter. At the end of the day, like you might lose friends that aren't necessarily friends in this journey if they don't get where you're going with all this.
Right, exactly.
Like the real stay next to you.
That's
That's
very true. Yeah. Those are ones to keep.
Right, but the future that we're headed towards and the workforce that we're headed towards, if you look at it in that way, I think all of us in a way are our own entrepreneur in some ways of what we do, right? And profession. Like if you look at your resumes, everyone has a special skill and that's what they're selling and that's why they get hired, right? And and really what's coming too is if you look at the professional world, I mean that's why all of the that's what makes the world go around from a monetary standpoint because we're all selling services to each other to try to better whatever product or whatever they're doing, right? But if you start looking at how AI is headed right now, the funny thing is like, who's gonna buy these products if everyone doesn't have jobs, if everyone's not doing anything? Like it's now suddenly turned to a whole situation where the next step is everyone needs to become an entrepreneur. Everyone needs to become a way to protect their identity and their differentiator of what they do to now resell it as a subscription and choose how they want to enter the workforce back. Because the biggest thing that's going on right now is all these people are being laid off, and instead of going back in a way where you're viewed as a product with or a mechanical mechanism within their business model, you can actually be a way to contribute your intelligence in a subscription aspect of how we're doing it to give you the ability to break free from that restraint. And it looks more of a way of something where every individual in a way is from a collective intelligence is now contributing to what they're getting out of it. They get put in, they get out of it. And there's no longer the few who are living these luxurious lives and on yachts and everything else, making money on you slaving away at your job in the professional service world where your great ideas are never really rewarded. How many times have us all seen that fall short? So it's kind of like the evolution is here, and if AI is used in a way to provide the individual the ability to elevate their intelligence into the digital aspect of how they interact, you suddenly have the ability to now allow for people to become entrepreneurs without the pain and suffering that we're talking about because you're providing a framework for them to do it within, just like they're already in the physical world.
Yeah. And it hits at the core, like at the end of the day, we're all creators. We all, whatever religion you follow, whether it be whatever religion you follow, the religion's based on a creator, right? So we're all creators. And yeah, that we create. When we don't create, we lose purpose. So everything we've ever known at one point had to be created, right? Everything like you look at had to have been created. So we embody all of that around us to be creators. So here's to the creators.
Wow. What, yeah, what a perfect way to end this episode. And I'm curious if people want to reach out, investors or clients, what's the best way of doing that?
You talk.
The email, phone, however you see like fit. We're always entertaining ideas.
MyShow.ai
MyShow.ai.
or LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn. Chris has a LinkedIn. We can provide those to you. Emails, I can give you that. Open book. Reach out.
Awesome. Sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks for that. And to everyone listening in, thank you so much for joining this episode. Really appreciate it. If you feel like you found some value in this episode, which I think there's a ton of it in here, feel free to hit that like button. Of course, subscribe and hit that bell button too. Would really help out. All right. Cheers. Have a good one.
Hey, Mark. Appreciate it.
Here's, thank you.
I appreciate it also. Cheers.